Hello and welcome back to another Macbeth revision video. Now, when you're studying Macbeth, remember that one of the main characters that you do need to be able to write about is the character of Macduff. Macduff doesn't really feature that much in Act 1. He only starts really becoming quite a pivotal character and a really important character towards the end of the play, and ultimately it is Macduff who firstly never trusts appearances. He's very discerning, he's very quick to realize and figure out that, you know, maybe Macbeth has something to do with this, and ultimately he is the one that kills Macbeth. But rather than taking the power for himself, he does what is right according to a Shakespearean audience. He respects the divine right of kings and he hands back the crown back to Malcolm, and this is King Duncan's eldest son. So when you're thinking about the character of Macduff, he illustrates again an ideal man, the person who is great at playing his position. He is a thane but also a knight. However, he never ever lets ambition corrupt his mind, and he also always stays loyal to King Duncan and King Duncan's lineage, okay, his sons and his children thereafter. The first quotation I would suggest if you're writing about Macduff's character, or if you've got a question relating to Macduff or the extract relates to him, is firstly, consider when he discovers King Duncan's dead body, okay? He is horrified. He says, "Most sacrilegious murder," and he speaks here using alliteration to emphasize that it's unspeakable what he's seen, okay? It's absolutely horrifying. He can't even fathom that somebody can kill the king. This is something that's a massive outrage. Again, we can see here that he's incredibly loyal to the king. And the theme you want to tie this to when we're discussing this quotation is the theme of ambition. We can see here, in contrast to Macbeth, Macduff lacks any ambition. This is a good thing in Shakespeare's time, okay? Not having ambition and not wanting to rise above your social status or your social position is something that's good. It leads to stability in society. And Macduff does not have any ambition. And on top of that, he's also horrified that somebody would have this ambition to kill the king. Equally, when you're thinking about context, this illustrates or relates to the divine right of kings. Remember, of course, many Jacobeans, including obviously characters within the play like Macduff, believed that the king's position at the top of the hierarchy, at the top of the social hierarchy, right beneath God, was unquestioned. So this idea of somebody killing the king and questioning this and also usurping him, taking him away and putting themselves in his place, was something that was horrifying and shocking and even unspeakable. What we can see is Macduff stays incredibly loyal to this notion of divine right of kings, and of course he's also scared that now this sacrilegious act against God is now going to cause things, really unnatural, chaotic things to happen. That's the first quotation when you're considering the character of Macduff. The second quotation is now later on, when he realizes, and it dawns on many people, especially by Act 4, that Macbeth is definitely behind all of these murders and all of these terrible things that have happened in Scotland, and he's probably the one that killed King Duncan. Macduff flees to England. He secretly flees to England and then goes to speak to Malcolm to encourage him to raise a troop or a group of soldiers even, so that they can come and topple Macbeth because he's not the correct leader. And Macduff says that Scotland is a nation miserable, okay? So he says, "O nation miserable with an untitled tyrant." This is taken from Act 4, Scene 3, when he's talking to Malcolm. He's basically telling Malcolm, you know, I know you've left Scotland behind, but it's such a miserable nation now. And he uses personification here, really powerful technique in this case, to show that Scotland is crushed under the weight of the wrong king. We can see here again, Macduff is incredibly loyal to the memory of King Duncan. And this alludes to the theme of kingship, okay? Remember, this theme illustrates how, and it contrasts how a country is incredibly powerful when the right leader is in power, the person that's chosen by God. A country becomes really powerful. However, when the wrong person is in power, which is Macbeth, because they've not been chosen by God, this leads to the ruin of the country. Hence the personification that Scotland is miserable. It is a country that seems almost at war with itself because people are dying all the time in Scotland. And it's actually not because of a war, it's because of the king Macbeth. Also, what you want to tie this to in terms of context is the great chain of being. What he's illustrating is a respect for his social position, but also he's illustrating a disgust at Macbeth for rising above in the great chain of being in the hierarchy and toppling and removing the king in order to put himself there. What has happened now, because he's done this, is Scotland is in chaos. It's a country that's now falling apart. The third quotation, which illustrates Macbeth's character, and of course you want to tie this into how he then really acquires a special reason for murdering Macbeth, is when he discovers his family has been killed, his wife and son. And he says, all my pretty chickens, ellipsis, in one fell swoop. So here he's basically saying, have all my children and all my family been killed in just one major action, right? So he's saying, you know, was it just that one time and all my family has been killed? And he speaks using this metaphor describing his family as chickens. They are helpless, they are vulnerable. And he's saying, surely the person that's behind this, Macbeth, is evil. They can't even put up a fair fight, and he's then sent murderers to kill them. This is an evil person, and now Macduff has acquired a really special reason to kill him. And this ties into the theme of ambition, where we can see that Macduff recognizes that Macbeth has become completely corrupted and completely evil as a result of his ambition. And equally, he has become corrupted because he has decided to listen and to obey the supernatural. This is the witches, okay? So it also ties into the theme of the supernatural. Contextually, his anger, and of course also his view that Macbeth is evil, also alludes to the Jacobean superstition of witches and the distrust of witches. And of course, the view that witches, contextually speaking, if you believed and listened to a witch and even let them be around you, they would turn you into an evil person, okay? That's the context you could tie that to. Now, the fourth quotation you want to use when talking about Macduff's character, so Macduff, not Macbeth, is when he is at battle. He then finally faces Macbeth, right? He's desperate to kill him himself. And Macbeth tells him, there's no use of you fighting me because I am I bear a charmed life. I have the witches and spells protecting me. And also, no man born of woman can ever kill me. And then Macduff tells him, despair thy charm, because Macduff was from his mother's womb, untimely raped. This is in Act 5, Scene 8. So of course here, Macduff now finally reveals to Macbeth, I was born via C-section. I was born via an unnatural birth, okay? And what you want to talk about in this quotation is this use of declarative sentence here, where Macduff is illustrating to Macbeth that now his time is up. He's now going to die. And of course, Macduff is really, really powerful in the sense that he is the key actor that restores the natural order. So Macbeth violates the divine right of kings, completely destroys the natural order. Macduff now, because he was from his mother's womb untimely ripped, he restores this natural order. And what you want to tie this to is the theme of the supernatural, because we can see that Macbeth at this stage realizes through Macduff's words that the supernatural had deliberately misled him. It had deliberately talked in half-truths, and now he is going to die. And of course, Macduff is showing him that you should never have trusted the supernatural because they were not going to do you any good. Now, in terms of context, what this illustrates, and of course Macduff's distrust of the supernatural, the witches, reflects the Jacobean distrust of witches. Jacobeans all would have agreed with Macduff that the witches are always up to no good. And of course this is what's going to happen to Macbeth. He ends up dying because he trusts the witches, and he shouldn't. The fifth and final quotation to use if you're writing about Macduff's character is once he kills him, he chops off his head and he comes in holding his head up to Malcolm and all the other men on Malcolm's side. He tells them all, here is the usurper's cursed head. Remember, usurper is somebody that kicks out a king from the rightful position. So he says the usurper's cursed head, ellipsis, hail King of Scotland. Okay, so he ends by saying to Malcolm, hail King of Scotland. Here is the person that stole the crown from you because you're supposed to have come after your dad. And by the way, here's the crown being handed back to you. When he hails Malcolm, King of Scotland, we can see that Macduff, he's quite a skilled fighter. He could have decided very easily to say, oh, I've killed Macbeth, so I'm going to be King of Scotland. But he gives the crown back to Malcolm, showing that he has no ambition and he wants to restore the natural order. And this is obviously illustrated through this exclamatory sentence, as well as this noun, which shows that Macduff he still feels really disgusted that Macbeth could ever dare usurp and kick out the king. Now, what you want to tie this to is the theme of ambition. Of course, what Macduff is trying to reinforce here, and Macduff's words reinforce how ambition can be corrupting. We can see that Macduff never decides to have any ambition. He also says, even if I'm in the position of power, he recognizes that he's in a position of power, but he never takes over. He never says, okay, I killed the king, now I'm going to be king. He gives back the crown to Malcolm, so he never develops any ambition, and that's seen as a good thing. Now, contextually, what you want to tie this to is this respect that the characters have of divine right of kings. Remember that, one of the morals of the message is, in addition to don't have ambition, also make sure you respect the position of the king and the position of queen when it comes to respecting the authority in the great chain of order. Okay, so divine right of kings is something that's reinforced within this play. So that's really it when it comes to the key quotations, as well as the language and structure analysis and the context and theme points you can make for 5 quotes relating to Macduff's character. Thank you for listening.